Hello there and happy lockdown. Well, it's Tuesday and I think tomorrow is going to be 3 weeks that we're in lockdown. And I saw on Tube that Russell Brand's cat died. Bless him. Yeah, it's pretty tough when you lose an animal, and it's pretty tough when you lose a family member or friend. But as we can know with what's going on right now, there's a lot of fear and people uncertain, and one of the things we really need to look at and change is our perspective of death, and realizing that nothing ever changes, nothing ever dies, everything's always changing. It's the one thing that we're guaranteed in life, is that things change. But I remember at my mother's service, which was just a few months ago, when I said that I would people will find different ways of honouring and remembering my mum, and I will look for her where she is and not where she was. And it's been quite interesting how that's unfolded, and I actually take strength in mum every day now, knowing that she's with me. But today I want to talk about my sister Sheila, who passed away in 1981 when I was 13 and she was 27. She was 14 years older than me. She was my godmother. And because mum already had 4 children and I came 7 years later as a result of the strawberry patches, Sheila kind of took it on herself to sort of help mum with raising me. So when she did pass away, fall ill, she fell ill one month. She came out on the weekend, as she normally does, to take me and mum to the races, and then I'd stay over at her place and she'd maybe take me to the movies. She was really cool because she used to show me off to her friends, and I'd be at her 21st and everything like that. And she really used to make an effort to make sure me and mum were sort of taken care of, because my other brother and sisters were overseas when I was growing up, around sort of from the age of like 10 onwards. So there was just me, mum and dad at home. So Sheila was pretty much my confidant. And she came out on the weekend. She took me and mum to the races, as I said. And then on the Monday, she phoned up and she said, she wasn't going into work, she wasn't feeling well. And then on the Thursday, she phoned up mum and she said, "Mum, can I come and stay with you? I'm really feeling weak and can't really look after myself." So she drove out and she came and saw mum. And then on Friday, mum was like, "She's just getting worse." So she phoned the doctor. And back then, the doctor used to do home visits. So the doctor came round to the house and visited us, and he said, "I think we need to get Sheila into hospital." So he booked her into the hospital, and over the weekend they were just taking blood from all over. They ended up taking blood from between her fingers and between her toes, because everything was coming back negative. They couldn't work out what was wrong with her. And on the Monday, they said they were moving her to the Auckland main hospital from Middlemore, and that she was quite serious. So, and then in the ambulance on the way to the hospital, she had cardiac arrest, and she had 3 cardiac arrests on the Monday. And when she was in at Auckland Hospital, they said she will cardiac arrest, and they're not going to. It was a month before my 13th birthday, so I wasn't. It was the parents' decision as to whether or not I was allowed to go in and see my sister. And mum chose it on herself to think that I was too young and it's not something I should see or be involved in. And of course, she had quite a staunch Catholic upbringing. Kids, they need to be protected. So I wasn't allowed to see Sheila. And as it was, that night I went home with her partner and I slept in Sheila's bed. And we got a phone call about that evening saying Sheila had passed away. So I just remembered lying in her bed, not sleeping all night, just staring at her ceiling, not knowing what had happened or what was going on. And then during the week, my brother and sisters were coming back from, I think they were over in London, And about the Wednesday we were going to go to the morgue to see Sheila, so I got all dressed up, knew they were all going, and then I came running down the stairs to go to the morgue, and Mum just looked at me and said, where do you think you're going? And I says, well, we're going to the morgue. And she's like, oh no, you're not, you're going to stay with Auntie Joyce. So I says, oh, all right. So I went and stayed with Auntie Joyce, and a bit peeved that I wasn't allowed to go and see Sheila, but it wasn't good for a young kid to see a dead body. And then the funeral came around, and I remember at the funeral going in with the family. We would go into the front of the restaurant, front of the church, and I remember sitting down, and then all of a sudden I saw this coffin at the front, and I was just sort of like, I just put two and two together. Nobody had spoken to me or talked to me about the processes of a funeral, and I remember just sitting down, and it was just sort of like, Sheila's in there, Sheila in there, Sheila's in there. I just started going loopy and just crying and just losing it. And Mum was just like, oh, got my auntie to take me down the back. She said, just take John to the back of the church. So they took me down there, and I was sobbing and crying, and I got myself together once and then it was a full-on Catholic service for my sister, and this priest just starts talking about how Sheila's in a better place, and I was listening, but all I was hearing was such shit that was just making me more and more angry. And I finally just sort of snapped when he turned around and he said the pain that you're feeling and the sorrow that you're feeling is a selfish pain. And I just lost it. I just said, who the fucking hell are you to be talking about my sister? You didn't even know her. And I just kicked off, and effing and blinding, and was just really unimpressed with this priest who thought he frickin' knew my sister or where she was and what was going on. And then my auntie just took me out of the church, and we went outside, and we just sort of waited until the service was over, and then we were going over to the cemetery up in Mangere, and we got there and we had the service at the cemetery, and they were about 50 metres away from the funeral, from the cemetery where the coffin was going down. And Ma was holding Mum's hand, and she just bent down to me and she goes, don't look back. And so what do you do when somebody tells you to not do something? You do it. So I turned around and I looked around, and Sheila, the coffin, was still the coffin lowering into the ground, and I just took off running after it, just screaming her name out, going, Sheila, Sheila. And then my brother, who was 11 years older than me, came running after me and just grabbed me and dropped to the ground and just hugged me. And I think that was the first hug I had from when Sheila passed away. And then from that, I never spoke Sheila's name again until I was 21. So for 9 years I never spoke her name. And at the same time I was coming up with my feelings of sexuality, and realised that Sheila was the only person that actually knew that I was gay. She knew before I did, because she used to invite me to her parties and functions, and she'd sit me with her interesting friends. And yes, I'd sometimes just go to the cemetery and just sit and talk to her on my own. I wouldn't go with the family because it just felt like such a personal loss, and nobody knew what I was going through. So it was part of during my teens. I just lost interest. I wanted to withdraw from love. I thought, if this is what it feels like to lose something you love, I don't want to love anyone. And I kind of started pulling away. And I went quite dark through my teenage years, a bit of punk goth and what have you, and quite heavy marijuana smoking, and a lot of uppers, a lot of no-dos, because there wasn't a lot you could get in New Zealand. Just to numb the pain, really. Managed to get through high school, didn't really study, but just passed exams, got into university with no idea or knowledge of what I wanted to do. And then I dropped out of university, went to London at 19, and finally came out to my family that I was gay at 21 in a really brutal letter, which I'll talk more about that later because I'll try and keep this short. And then I realised it was about 6 months after that I actually was able to talk about Sheila. So there's a link there. keeping all that in. But anyway, that's fast forward 38 years to when, of all the journeys that I've had in life, and Mum's passing. And Mum's passing was a very, very different experience, and I'll talk about that sometime soon. So, lots of love. Stay living from your heart. Move away from fear. Trust that everything's going to be all right. And have a wonderful frickin' day. Lots of love. Take care.